And now we get to part three, the rise of Hitler and the National Socialist Party. And so this is actually looking at the various elements of Nazism. You've seen these before. Here are our learning outcomes. Which brings us to a discussion of Nazism. I'm pretty sure you didn't write any of the previous answers to the question down, but the roots of Nazism and ideology and what was it all about. The roots of Nazism. So basically, we have some different interpretations of what Nazism was grounded in. So essentially, what is its ideological, theoretical blueprint, right? So historians, and these are your contemporary or traditional explanations, working soon after World War II, basically said that Nazism was a result of problems inherent to Germany. That is, this is a natural outgrowth of the authoritarianism and nationalism that of earlier German history. Essentially, Germany hadn't democratized the way the rest of Europe had. And this was the result. Now we get to some people revising that traditional explanation. And so German historians later on are like, slow your roll, okay? This was not a German thing, but this was a result of the social and economic pressures in all of Europe that was during the 1920s and 30s, and this was a result of something that was unprecedented, something that had never been seen before. Kind of like this was one, relatively common because it was a pan-European thing, and two, this was an outlier because the 20s and 30s were totally cray-cray, and it resulted in cray-crayness. And then we have post-revisionists that essentially combine the two interpretations. And basically, this dude, Brocker, or Bracher, or Bob, said that past research has been clear that an examination of the roots of National Socialism must be conducted simultaneously on two levels, the German and the European. So essentially, now one of the previous interpretations is wholly correct. That what actually happened was a mixture of the two. And so we continue with the post-revisionist look at Nazism. And so we can say that Nazism borrowed from the realpolitik of Bismarck. That is the way that Bismarck organized Germany's foreign policy from 1871 after the unification of Germany, that focuses more on practical considerations, looking at what's going on and about maintaining power, but is not connected to ideology. So ideology is second to maintaining power and reacting to what's happening around you. We can also say that there is this idea of nationalism that developed in the 19th century during that pan-German sentiment, and the rationalism of these same philosophers that kind of looks at the organization of the world in a rational way, separate from supernatural forces and religion. We can also say that we have racial theories from the fringes of the interpretation of Darwin. So this is basically what is used to say that human development as a whole, the development of humanity as a whole, is connected to or can be interpreted through the lens of Darwin. And we have then, therefore, the Aryan races, or like the most important aspect of human development. What needs to happen in order for humans to develop is that the Aryan races will triumph and become and basically control the lesser races. We also have Italian fascism. And so Part of it is the model that Mussolini provided in seizing power and restructuring government in this nationalist image. And then, of course, even though Hitler hated Stalin and didn't agree with communism, Stalin provided this example of complete practicality, complete brutality, and complete control. And of course, at this time, Stalin was the singularly most not powerful, but in a way, if you look at the rest of Europe, Stalin had like the most, had been able to consolidate power in his hands the most through utter logic, no sentimentality, and brutality. And so that also provides Hitler with an example to follow. So the 25 points that we looked at were mostly written by Drexler. And so, in a way, we can't really look at them as a real iteration of Hitler's ideology. But this comes in Mein Kampf, which he wrote while he was in prison after the Beer Hall Putsch. All right. And so here's a quote, as he says, the best way to take control over a people and control them utterly is to take a little bit of their freedom at a time, to erode rights by 1,000 tiny and almost imperceptible reductions. In this way, the people will not see those rights and freedoms being removed until past the point at which these changes cannot be reversed. So, Mein Kampf is not exactly a manifesto. It's not the manifesto like Mussolini wrote, which laid out step by step what the belief was and the ideology. However, it does set out a set of basic principles of how he will proceed and how the government should proceed in terms of, fulfilling the ultimate goals, right? And so for him, the true basis of the state was race. And so this was counter to what was going on at the time in some ways, because you have this rise of Marxism, and which he basically thought were inventions of the Jews. So it's not about class warfare or fighting capitalism or anything like that. It's really about race. And so basically the main job, or one of the most important jobs of the state, of the government, is to create a strong ethnic community. And in order to create that strong ethnic community, you need to get rid of the undesirables, the alien elements that weaken that community. Again, connecting to ideas of social Darwinism. And so the state was to provide appropriate living space and resources for this population. And that is his idea of Lebensraum. And that means that it's acceptable for the state to struggle against other races. So from the very beginning, he's saying that Germany's going to be expansionist and it's going to be confrontational and aggressive. And in order to provide that appropriate living space, he set his eyes on the East and Russia. And so here we have a map of what the Greater German Reich was supposed to look like. And as the dominant Aryan race, basically they were going to subjugate and remove the Slavic race. He also set out some definite ideas about what political authority should be like. So he presents this concept of the leader principle, the Führerprinzip. And so essentially what it is, it's a pyramid where you have everybody at the bottom, and each level has a leader. And the leader and each level owes obedience to the leader above it. And not just obedience, like unquestioning. Leader says jump, the underling says how high. And at the top was the Führer, Hitler. And placing the Fuhrer at the top and himself does a couple of things. One, it consolidates power in his hand, right? And it places him as the ultimate authority of whatever happens in the Nazi Party. But there are still divisive elements within the Nazi Party. And this allows the Nazi Party like a veneer of consistency. And it provides it also provides clear leadership, and this clear leadership appeals to a lot of people. This especially to the people who look at representative democracy and see it as an epic failure. So they see this whole democratic experiment as the road to economic ruin and, of course, to humiliation for the German people. And so this winds up creating a situation in which the Nazis are seen not only as candidates to be elected into political power, but they are the guardians of all Germans. And not just the Germans in Germany, but all Germans. And as you know, there's some nationalist socialist stuff in this NSDAP. And so we're looking at now the socialist element that exists. By the time we get to 1933, there is a lot of disagreement within the party about its priorities. This started out as a party that was supposed to be working for the working classes and has like a strong socialist element to it. And of course, as he expands the appeal, more and more of that socialism is dropping out. And so, but Hitler saw this focus on socialism as undermining the unity of the party. So while the socialist elements want to kind of reform big business and redistribute some wealth and all of this stuff, he saw socialism as being divisive, right, within the party and within the country. And the focus should be on nationalism. It should be on the Volk people. It should be on creating this community. It should be loyalty to the state. And like fascism in Italy, one of the things we can say is that Nazism had a element of negative cohesion. And here are your hints. The Treaty of Versailles, the Weimar Republic, parliamentary liberalism, Marxism, Judaism. So it's in red, so that means you need to pause and answer this. What does this mean? What does an element of negative cohesion mean about Nazism's appeal?